Hello everyone. Have you ever looked at a woman you thought you knew, your wife, your girlfriend, maybe even a friend, and suddenly realized there are entire worlds inside her that you've never visited? That she carries truths about herself and about you that she'll never say out loud. We live in an age where everyone talks about equality, love, openness, yet behind closed doors there are desires, disappointments, and silent negotiations that rarely make it into the light. Most men think they know what women want because they've been told over and over, by movies, by social media, by the polite answers women give when asked. But the shocking truth, many of those answers are masks. Polished, pretty masks worn to protect something raw, something vulnerable, and sometimes something powerfully strategic. And here's the uncomfortable part: if you don't learn to read beneath those masks, you will keep giving your best in ways she doesn't value, while missing the things she actually craves. This isn't about tricking her or controlling her. It's about understanding the unspoken rules of attraction, respect, and longing that shape every romantic connection after 30. Today, we're going to walk together into that hidden territory. I'll share with you the truths most women will never admit, but once you see them, you'll never see her or yourself the same way again. Have you ever noticed how, in the beginning of a relationship, everything feels effortless? You say something funny, she laughs like you've just told the most brilliant joke in the world. You brush your hand against hers and there's a spark, electric, undeniable. In those moments, you feel like you've unlocked something sacred. She chooses you, she wants you, she lets you in. But somewhere along the way, that ease changes. The laughter still happens, but it's different, less spontaneous, more polite. The spark is still there, but sometimes you have to search for it. And you start to wonder, did she change? Or was there always something I didn't see? Here's the thing most men don't realize: women rarely reveal the entirety of themselves. Not because they want to be deceptive, but because they're taught from a very young age that showing everything can be dangerous. That being fully honest about their needs, their fantasies, their frustrations might make them too much, too demanding, or too difficult. So they learn to be curated. They tell you the parts of the truth that feel safe. They smile when something hurts. They say it's fine when it's not. They nod when they actually disagree. And they do it so gracefully, so naturally, that you don't even realize there's a whole other conversation happening beneath the one you're having. The shocking truth is, many men never learn to hear that second conversation. They never see the subtle withdrawal when she doesn't feel desired anymore. Not just loved, but wanted. They don't notice the way she stops sharing certain thoughts because she's decided he won't understand. And so, the intimacy that once felt effortless starts to feel like work. Now, why am I telling you this? Because the man who learns to see beyond what's said, who learns to understand the quiet signals, the language of what's unsaid, becomes the man she will never want to leave. Not because he's perfect, not because he's wealthy or conventionally handsome, but because he gives her something rare, the feeling of being truly seen. Let me tell you a story. Years ago, I worked with a couple, let's call them Daniel and Claire. They had been together for 12 years. Daniel loved Claire deeply. He worked hard, he was faithful, he brought her coffee in bed on Sundays. And yet, Claire had become distant, not angry, not unkind, just absent in small ways. The sparkle in her eyes when she looked at him had dulled. Daniel kept asking her what was wrong. Every time, she said, nothing. But fine is almost never fine. Eventually, through conversation, Claire admitted something she had never dared to say. She felt invisible, not unloved, but unseen. Daniel had stopped looking at her the way he once did. Not just with affection, but with hunger, with admiration. He loved her as the mother of his children, as his partner in life. But he had forgotten to love her as his woman. That is one of the first truths most women will not tell you. They want to feel desired, deeply, passionately, long after the honeymoon phase ends. And not just for their beauty, but for their essence. For the parts of them that feel dangerous, playful, mysterious. When a man stops seeing that part of her, she begins to hide it, not because it's gone, but because it's safer to bury it than to live with the pain of it being ignored. And here's the mistake many men make when they sense this distance. They either ignore it and hope it passes, or they try to fix it with grand gestures, expensive gifts, a sudden romantic getaway. And yes, those things can spark excitement, but they don't repair the absence. What she craves isn't a single big moment. It's the consistent, subtle reminder that she is still the woman who caught your eye, not just the person who shares your bills. You see, desire isn't about sex alone. It's about presence. The way you look at her when she's talking. The way you notice the small details. Her perfume, her choice of earrings, the way her mood shifts when she's had a hard day. It's about letting her feel that even after years together, you still choose her, not out of habit, but out of passion. Now, let's go deeper, because there's another truth most women will never tell you. And it's one that many men misinterpret. Women will often test you, not to manipulate, but to feel safe. I know the word test makes many men defensive, but think about it. In the early stages of attraction, a woman will naturally want to know if you can hold your own emotionally, if you can be steady when she's unpredictable, if you can meet her complexity without retreating or overreacting. This testing doesn't always stop after marriage or years together. It just changes form. Maybe she makes a teasing remark to see if you can laugh at yourself. Maybe she disagrees with you in a social setting to see if you respect her opinion publicly. Maybe she brings up a sensitive topic to see if you shut down or lean in. These are not games. They are invitations, sometimes clumsy, sometimes frustrating, for you to show her that you are not fragile, that you can meet her where she is without trying to shrink her or silence her. When a man fails these tests repeatedly, not because he's unkind, but because he takes them as attacks rather than opportunities, she begins to withhold. She stops bringing the parts of herself that might disrupt the peace. And while that might sound like less conflict, it's actually the beginning of emotional erosion. A relationship without small disruptions, without space for disagreement, becomes polite, and polite love is the slow death of passion. So here's the first shift I want you to make. When she challenges you, lean in. Not aggressively, not defensively, but with curiosity. Ask yourself, what is she really trying to tell me right now? Sometimes the argument about the dishes isn't about the dishes. It's about whether she still feels like a priority in your life. Sometimes the teasing isn't mockery. It's her way of asking if you can still play with her. The shocking truth is, most women are not looking for a man who never upsets them. They're looking for a man who can upset them and still make them feel safe in the same breath. And this is where I want to pause. Not to end, but to let this sink in. Because once you understand how desire and safety intertwine in a woman's world, you begin to see every interaction differently. You see, when we talk about desire and safety in the same breath, it sounds contradictory, doesn't it? Safety feels stable, predictable. Desire feeds on mystery, on uncertainty, on a sense of risk. And yet for a woman, both must exist together if she is to keep her heart open and her passion alive. Too much safety without desire turns love into friendship. Too much desire without safety turns it into chaos. Most men, without realizing it, tilt the balance too far in one direction. Some become so focused on being the good guy, the reliable partner, the provider, that they forget to be the lover, the man who can make her pulse race. Others lean into charm and seduction, but never create the emotional foundation where she can let her guard down completely. Here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. After a certain point in life, women stop chasing the fantasy of the perfect man. What they crave instead is the rare combination of a man who can anchor them and still make them feel a little unsteady in the best possible way. Think about it. In your 20s, attraction is often fueled by novelty. In your 30s and beyond, it's fueled by contrast. The moment she feels both secure and slightly thrilled in your presence, you become unforgettable. But here's where many men stumble. They stop cultivating the qualities that first drew her in. The playfulness fades. The curiosity about her inner world fades. The willingness to take risks together, emotional or physical, fades. And without those things, the relationship slides quietly into a business partnership with shared responsibilities, not a living, breathing romance. One man I spoke to, we'll call him Marco, had been married for 15 years. He loved his wife deeply, but he had fallen into the trap so many do, believing that love is enough to sustain attraction. He provided for her, he was present for their kids, he never cheated. But their physical connection had all but disappeared. When I asked him when was the last time he looked at her, as if she were a mystery, he stared at me blankly. I know everything about her, he said, and that was exactly the problem. He had stopped seeing her as a woman with evolving desires and had started seeing her as a fixed part of his daily landscape. Here's another truth most women won't tell you because they fear it will sound ungrateful. They want to be surprised by you, not just with gifts or vacations, but with the way you see them. They want you to catch them off guard with a glance that makes them feel like they're the only person in the room. They want you to interrupt the routine with something unexpected. A sudden kiss in the kitchen, an unplanned night out, a question that makes them reveal a part of themselves they haven't shared in years. Why? Because when you surprise her, you signal that you are still paying attention, that you still see her as a dynamic, fascinating woman, not just the sum of the roles she plays in your life. Now, I want to talk about something delicate, the way women communicate dissatisfaction. Most men expect a clear, direct statement. I'm unhappy because of X, but many women will never put it that way. Instead, you'll see it in the small changes first. She starts going to bed earlier or later than you. She fills her schedule so there's less overlap between your time and hers. She shares fewer details about her day. These are not always signs of lost love. They are signs she feels there's no room for her real feelings in the space you share. And here's the difficult part. By the time she voices a big problem, she's often been living with it quietly for months, maybe years. Men often experience these moments as sudden shocks. I had no idea she was unhappy, but for her, The unhappiness has been whispering for a long time, so the question becomes, how do you hear the whispers before they turn into an earthquake? You become fluent in the language of her silences. That means noticing when her tone changes, when her responses are shorter, when her enthusiasm fades for things she used to love doing with you. One client, Samuel, told me he thought his wife had simply matured. Out of wanting adventure, they used to travel, take late night drives, try new things together. But over time, she stopped suggesting those things. He assumed she had grown past them until she left him for a man who made her feel alive again. It wasn't that she no longer wanted adventure, it was that she no longer wanted it with him, because she believed he didn't value that part of her anymore. This is the third truth women rarely articulate. They will not beg you to notice them. They will give you opportunities, subtle ones, but if you repeatedly miss them, they will eventually redirect that energy somewhere else, toward friends, work, or yes, sometimes another man. And here's where I see men make a fatal mistake. They think reclaiming her attention requires competing with whatever has replaced them. If she's investing in work, they push her to work less. If she's close to friends, they complain she's out too much. But the real path back isn't to compete. It's to reignite the part of you she once couldn't resist. That means you have to ask yourself some uncomfortable questions. Have I stopped flirting with her? Have I stopped pursuing her as if I could still lose her? Have I made our conversations purely functional instead of playful or intimate? Many men believe that once a woman commits, the chase is over. But for a woman who values connection and passion, the chase isn't about winning her once, it's about choosing her again and again. Not from desperation, but from desire. And desire, my friends, is a choice. It's easy in the beginning when hormones and novelty do the heavy lifting. But after years together, desire becomes something you create with intention, with presence, with the willingness to disrupt the comfortable patterns that slowly numb you both. I know this sounds like work, and it is, but it's also joy. Because when you stop coasting and start courting her again, you get to rediscover not just who she is now, but who you are when you're with her. And that version of you, the one who is curious, alive, attentive, is the man she fell in love with in the first place. And there's one more layer to this we need to explore, because it's perhaps the most shocking truth of all. Sometimes, when a woman seems distant, she's not waiting for you to fix it. She's testing whether you will notice without being told. This is not about playing games, it's about trust. If she has to spell out every need, she will feel like you're meeting the letter of the request but missing the spirit of the connection. The men who keep their women's hearts are the ones who learn to anticipate. Not perfectly, not all the time, but enough to make her feel that she matters without having to campaign for it. There's a certain age that comes when a woman feels unseen, and it doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it's just a shift in the way she speaks to you, less warmth in her voice, less light in her eyes. Other times it's in her laughter. She still laughs at your jokes, but there's no music in it anymore. That's the moment you're not supposed to notice. But if you don't, that ache turns into distance. And here's the raw truth. Most women will not sit you down and say, I don't feel desired. I don't feel chosen. I'm losing the feeling of us. Why? Because the moment they say it, they risk being told they're overreacting. Or worse, that you don't know how to give them what they need, so they keep it inside, even as it changes the way they relate to you. I once spoke with a woman, let's call her Elise, who had been married for 20 years. She loved her husband, respected him, appreciated everything he provided. But she confessed that in her private thoughts, she was no longer the leading woman in his story. She had become a supporting character. He loves me, she said, but he doesn't see me anymore. I could cut my hair, change my perfume, wear something new, and he'd barely notice. But if the lawn isn't mowed, he notices that. What Elise was describing wasn't neglect in the traditional sense. It was a loss of attention to her aliveness. And for a woman over 30, whose identity may already be intertwined with work, family, and responsibility, feeling alive in love is not a luxury, it's oxygen. This is the fourth truth most women won't tell you. They don't just want you to love who they are, they want you to keep discovering who they are becoming, because she is not the same woman you met 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Her dreams have shifted, her insecurities have evolved, her passions may have changed shape entirely, and if you don't keep meeting her where she is now, you will slowly be loving a memory, not a person. So, how do you do that? You stay curious. You ask questions not just about her day, but about her mind. You don't assume you already know her answers. You give her space to surprise you, and when she does, you respond with intrigue, not dismissal. Now, there's something that may be even harder to hear, but it's essential. Women will often protect the parts of themselves they think you can't handle. Maybe she wants more physical intimacy than you assume. Maybe she fantasizes about experiences you judge. Maybe she has ambitions that would change your shared life in ways you fear. If she senses you can't meet those truths without shutting down, she won't tell you. And the parts she hides will find another outlet, sometimes in friendships, sometimes in private fantasies, sometimes in quiet resentment. One man I coached, Andra, learned this the hard way. His wife had been unusually quiet about her creative work. He assumed it was just a hobby, nothing serious. In reality, she had been pouring herself into a novel for 3 years, but she never spoke of it, because the last time she brought up a big idea, he dismissed it as impractical. By the time he discovered her book, it was already in the hands of an editor, someone who had given her the enthusiasm he never did. The fifth truth women rarely voice is this: they will share their deepest selves only where those selves feel welcome. If you are not that place, someone or something else will be. And this is not just about trust, it's about emotional intimacy. Women don't simply want to be safe with you, they want to feel expanded with you. They want to feel more alive, more confident, more themselves because you're in their life. If your presence makes her smaller, she will slowly step away, even if her feet never leave. Now, before you think this is all about what you do for her, let me be clear: women are also responsible for keeping the relationship alive. But what I've learned in decades of observing couples is that men often underestimate the power they have to set the tone. Your attention, your curiosity, your presence, these are invitations for her to bring more of herself into the relationship. And perhaps the most shocking truth of all, sometimes when a woman pulls away, she's not doing it because she stopped loving you. She's doing it because she's testing whether you will fight for the connection or let it drift. This is the quiet heartbreak I see so often. A woman who longs for her man to notice, to step up, to break the silence. And when he doesn't, she tells herself he's simply not capable of giving her what she needs. That belief becomes a wall, and once it's high enough, it's almost impossible to climb over. So if you feel that distance now, don't wait for a crisis. Don't wait for the day she says, "I don't think this is working." Lean in now. Pay attention now. Interrupt the autopilot now. And remember, you don't do this to avoid losing her. You do it to keep loving her in a way that's worthy of the love she's giving you. Because a woman who feels seen, desired, and safe will give back more than you could ever imagine. You may be wondering, what happens if you've already let that distance grow? If the sparkle has already faded? If the conversations are mostly about logistics and responsibilities? That's where we go next. Because once you understand the truths I've shared so far, the next step is learning how to rebuild from wherever you are right now, whether you're still deeply in love or just holding on by a thread. The beautiful thing about attraction and intimacy is that they are not fixed states. They're not like height or eye color, unchangeable facts. They are living forces. They grow, they fade, they spark again. And that means even if the warmth between you has cooled, there's a way to bring it back. But it requires something many men resist: the willingness to step back into vulnerability. Let's be honest, vulnerability is a tricky word for most men. It can feel like weakness. But in love, vulnerability is not weakness. It's a signal of strength. It's saying, I care enough to risk being hurt in order to connect with you. And for a woman, that is deeply magnetic. Not because she wants you fragile, but because she wants to feel the truth of you. If you felt her pull away, the first step isn't to try and drag her back. It's to meet her where she is. That means slowing down enough to actually see her. Not just, how was your day? But what's been on your mind lately that you haven't shared? Not just, do you want to go out? But what would make you feel excited this week? Sometimes reigniting connection isn't about doing something dramatic. It's about changing the quality of the space between you. If the space has become transactional, fill it with curiosity. If it's become heavy, add play. If it's become predictable, bring surprise. But here's the thing, you can't fake this. Women, especially after 30, have an incredible radar for authenticity. They can feel when you're ticking boxes to improve the relationship versus when you are genuinely re-engaging because you want her. So before you take action, check your intention. Is it to fix her mood or to actually reconnect? Is it to avoid conflict or to truly bring her closer? One of the most powerful tools for reigniting intimacy is shared novelty. Neuroscience shows us that novelty, the experience of something new, releases dopamine, the same brain chemical associated with attraction and excitement. In the early days, everything you do together is novel. Over time, that novelty disappears, and so does the chemical spark. The solution isn't necessarily to change her or yourself, it's to change the context in which you experience each other. That might mean traveling somewhere neither of you has been, learning a new skill together, or simply shaking up your routines. Even small changes, switching your usual date night spot, taking a different route on a walk, cooking a new type of cuisine, can reintroduce the feeling of discovery. And don't underestimate the power of touch. Not just sexual touch, but affectionate, attentive touch. Touch that says, I'm here, I'm with you, I'm paying attention. Over time, many couples let their physical connection shrink to moments that lead to sex or moments that are purely functional. But human touch is one of the fastest ways to re-establish emotional closeness. A hand on her back when you pass by, fingers brushing her hair out of her face, holding her longer than necessary when you hug. These small gestures speak directly to the nervous system. They say safety and desire can coexist here. Now there's another layer, and this is where some men struggle. You have to reintroduce a bit of unpredictability. Not the kind that creates anxiety, but the kind that keeps her curious. This is where the balance between safety and desire comes into play again. If every interaction is predictable, the mind gets bored. And when the mind gets bored, the body follows. So maybe you send her a message in the middle of the day, telling her something you've been thinking about her, but make it specific, make it personal. Maybe you suggest an activity you know will challenge her in a good way. Maybe you bring her into a world she's never seen you in before. Invite her to watch you do something you're passionate about, something that lights you up. The goal here isn't to become someone you're not. It's to reawaken the parts of you that she hasn't seen in a long time. Because those are the parts that will remind her why she chose you in the first place. I worked with a man named Victor who thought his marriage was beyond saving. His wife was polite, distant, and clearly uninterested in intimacy. When I asked him when she had last seen him in his element, confident, playful, alive, he couldn't remember. His life had become a loop work, home, screens, sleep. So he started small. He took up a hobby he'd loved in his 20s, something he was good at. He invited her to watch him one day without expectation. That night, she told him she'd forgotten how attractive he was when he was in his zone. This is important. Attraction isn't just about what you do with her. It's also about who you are in yourself. If you've lost connection with your own vitality, your own sense of aliveness, she will feel it. And she can't be more excited about you than you are about yourself. That's why reigniting connection often starts inside you. Before you try to light her up, make sure your own fire is burning. That means tending to your health, your passions, your friendships, your sense of purpose. A man who is alive in his own life naturally becomes magnetic. And here's the final piece of reigniting desire. You have to be willing to create tension. Not the kind that leads to conflict, but the kind that creates anticipation. Many men confuse keeping the peace with keeping the spark. But peace without spark is just quiet. A little bit of teasing, a little bit of challenge, a little bit of mystery. These things keep the relationship dynamic. This could be as simple as disagreeing playfully instead of avoiding disagreement, or holding her gaze a second longer than usual before leaning in to kiss her. It's about allowing her to feel that you are still unpredictable enough to excite her, yet steady enough to trust. When you combine safety with surprise, curiosity with stability, you recreate the environment where love and desire can breathe together. And when that happens, you're not just getting her back, you're meeting her again in the version of herself she is today. When you begin to see the hidden layers of a woman's heart, the quiet longings, the unspoken fears, the unexpressed needs, you also begin to see yourself differently. Because every time you recognize one of those truths, you're not just decoding her, you're becoming a man who can hold more complexity, more emotion, more life. And that is the kind of man a woman remembers. The changes you make when you take these truths seriously aren't small adjustments. They're shifts in the way you move through the relationship, the way you listen, the way you lead. You stop treating connection as something that just happens when the conditions are right, and start seeing it as something you create. And once you do, you realize that passion is not some wild, unpredictable fire. It's a flame you can learn to tend, even when the wind picks up. You know, people often say that women are mysterious. But the mystery isn't because they're unknowable. It's because most men stop being curious once they think they've figured her out. They stop asking questions. They stop wondering what else there is to discover. They stop exploring. And yet, the woman beside you is always changing. Her body, her desires, her dreams, her fears. The man who keeps her attention isn't the one who has all the answers. It's the one who keeps asking the right questions. And that means you can never afford to put your relationship on autopilot. Autopilot is for machines, not for love. A relationship on autopilot may keep moving forward, but it doesn't go anywhere new. And women, especially women over 30 who know themselves more deeply, need to feel that forward motion, that growth, that evolution together. But here's something you may not have expected. When you become the kind of man who truly sees her, who desires her as she is today, who invites her into experiences that make her feel alive, you also change the way she sees you. She begins to bring more of herself to you. She opens doors she once kept locked. She becomes more playful, more generous, more responsive. Not because you harmed it in some transactional way, but because you created a space where it feels natural for her to bring that part of herself forward. And let's not romanticize this. It doesn't mean there will never be disagreements, frustrations, or moments of distance. There will, but when you've built a connection on this kind of attention and presence, those moments don't become endings, they become recalibrations. Instead of seeing them as threats, you see them as invitations to lean in again. Think back to the man you were when she first met you. You were attentive, engaged, curious. You noticed her not just because you had to, but because you wanted to. You looked for ways to make her smile, not to avoid conflict, but because her smile genuinely lit you up. That man is still inside you. The difference now is that you have the wisdom to match the passion. And maybe that's the biggest truth of all women. Don't stop wanting to feel chosen just because time has passed. They want to feel chosen more because time has passed. Because the longer you've been together, the more meaningful it is when you look at her and think, yes, still you, always you. So here's my challenge to you. Not for a day, not for a week, but as a way of being, stay awake in your relationship. Look for the details that others miss. Notice the ways she's changing. Ask questions you've never asked before. Touch her in ways that make her lean in instead of pull away. And most importantly, show her, through your actions, your words, your attention, that she is not just a part of your life. She is a place you choose to return to over and over again. Because when a woman feels truly seen, when she feels desired for who she is right now, when she knows she can bring her full self to you without fear of judgment, you won't have to wonder if she'll stay. She will want to, and she will not just stay physically, she will stay emotionally, mentally, and passionately connected. And maybe that's the shocking truth no one dares to say out loud. Women are not complicated puzzles to be solved once. They are living stories to be read every day, with new chapters unfolding right in front of you. The question is, are you still reading? If you are, then you'll discover that the woman beside you, whether you've known her for 6 months or 60 years, still has the power to surprise you, to challenge you, to inspire you. And in that space, love never has to grow stale. It can keep deepening, keep expanding, keep reminding you why you chose each other in the first place. So don't wait for her to tell you what's missing. Don't wait for the spark to fade to go looking for matches. Be the man who tends the fire while it's still burning. Be the man who makes her feel that being with you is the safest, most thrilling place she could be. Because when you become that man, not in theory, not for a week, but as a way of life, you won't just hold her attention. You'll hold her trust, her admiration, her desire. And those are the kinds of things that no one else can take away from you unless you stop giving them.